Ladies and gentlemen, imagine standing on the edge of a cliff looking at the vast landscape before you. It's daunting, exhilarating, and humbling all at once. Now imagine that instead of admiring the view, your mind is filled with questions. Am I doing this right? Is this enough? Should I have climbed another peak? There, in that moment, you've been robbed not by anyone, but by the inner voice that subtly whispers at you as you aren't enough. You see, confidence isn't a simple product of talent or luck. It's not something we find or lose in some external event or place. It's a delicate flame within, easily smothered when we chase an illusion of perfection. Every moment we measure ourselves by impossible standards, we plant seeds of inadequacy. We become spectators in our own lives, forever reaching yet never arriving, because perfection was never the destination. And so when we glance at the success of others and feel a pang of jealousy or disappointment, we are trading our own gifts for shadows. The image of others' success is nothing but a reflection, an illusion that captures only a fraction of their story. But by comparing, we diminish ourselves, giving away our confidence piece by piece. Then there's the paralyzing fear of failure, as if a mistake could define us forever. But failure is as natural as the sunrise. It's life's reminder that growth happens at the edge of our comfort zones. We learn not by winning, but by daring, stumbling, and getting back up. Each fall builds resilience. Each step back is an invitation to stand taller. What about the inner critic? That voice within that picks apart our flaws, finding fault even in our best efforts. These criticisms are like stones in a river, stopping the natural flow of self-assurance. To silence this critic is to allow the river of confidence to flow freely, unhindered by judgments that do nothing but reinforce a distorted version of who we are. And how often do we look outward for affirmation, hoping someone else can fill the empty spaces within? The problem with seeking validation from others is that it anchors our worth in something beyond our control. True confidence is found only when we turn inward, seeing ourselves as whole and worthy without need for applause. Overthinking, dwelling on past mistakes, setting ourselves unreachable goals, each one another stone upon our shoulders, we become heavy, weighed down by expectations, regrets, and endless analysis. But true confidence is light, effortless, born not of endless thought, but of presence. Here and now, where we embrace all that we are and all that we are not. In this moment, let us consider the world is vast with no single path to follow. There is no perfect version of ourselves waiting somewhere down the line. What holds us back isn't some inherent flaw or missing ingredient, but rather a belief that we must somehow be more than we already are. So breathe. Let go of the stones you carry and recognize that confidence was never lost. It was only hidden beneath these illusions. Embrace yourself in all your perfect imperfections, for there is nothing more freeing, nothing more powerful than the acceptance of who you already are. The illusion of perfection, it's a mesmerizing trap, isn't it? This subtle, constant whisper that there's some higher, flawless version of ourselves we must strive to reach. It's this mirage of unblemished accomplishment that draws us in, convincing us that if we could just be a little bit better, if we could smooth over every flaw and master every weakness, then we'd finally be worthy. But what is perfection really? Is it an end state, a fixed image that we can eventually arrive at? Or is it something far more elusive, a concept that keeps shifting just as we believe we're getting close? In reality, perfection is like a distant star. It appears bright, alluring, and clear from afar, but the closer we move toward it, the more we realize how unreachable it truly is. When we buy into this illusion, our efforts aren't dedicated to growth, expression, or joy. Instead, they're tethered to a haunting sense of insufficiency, a gnawing feeling that we're always a few steps short. The journey becomes less about discovering and more about desperately covering up every crack, every quirk, every human flaw that makes us who we are. The illusion of perfection tells us that mistakes are not a part of life, but a stain on our worth. We become overly cautious, hesitant to try new things or take risks, fearing that a misstep might reveal us as imperfect or unworthy. But life in its raw, authentic form was never meant to be spotless. Mistakes and growth are entwined, and real fulfillment comes from embracing this truth, not denying it. Think about the way nature operates. The trees, the rivers, the mountains, they all have their imperfections, their scars, their bends and curves. Yet we find beauty in these flaws because they reflect the passage of time, the resilience of life. The same goes for us. It's our humanity, our journey with its triumphs and stumbles that makes us beautiful, complex, and real. Perfectionism not only distances us from ourselves, but also from others. When we hold ourselves to impossible standards, we often project the same expectations onto those around us. We build walls instead of bridges, seeking only the flawless and shunning anything less. Yet, what a freeing realization it is to know that true confidence, true connection, and true purpose don't come from the illusion of perfection, but from authenticity. The moment we let go of the need to be perfect, we give ourselves permission to be whole. We invite back the playful, curious parts of ourselves that aren't afraid to stumble. We become more accepting, more compassionate, and ironically, more confident. Constant comparison, it's a habit that creeps in quietly, almost naturally, yet it saps our sense of self faster than we might realize. It starts with a glance at someone else's achievements, possessions, or appearance, and before we know it, we're measuring ourselves against a standard that was never ours to begin with. And in doing so, we give away little pieces of our confidence, allowing our value to be defined not by who we are, but by how we stack up against others. Comparison can be sneaky, manifesting in different forms. Maybe it's seeing a friend's success and feeling a sting of inadequacy, or scrolling through social media, where everyone seems to be living a perfect life. But here's the thing, we're only seeing fragments, selective snapshots of someone else's story. We're comparing our real, nuanced, sometimes messy lives with their carefully curated moments. It's like judging a book by its cover, taking the highlight reel and assuming it's the whole story. When we make these comparisons, we often forget that each person is on a unique path shaped by their own experiences, challenges, and timing. And by looking outward for validation or reference, we ignore the one journey that truly matters, our own. Constantly measuring ourselves against others creates a false sense of scarcity, as though life were a limited resource that's only fully enjoyed by the successful or perfect. We begin to feel we must compete to carve out our own worth, our own space. But self-worth isn't a competition. One person's success, beauty, or happiness does not diminish our own potential or value. Every moment we spend comparing is a moment we steal from our own growth, our own happiness, and our own sense of peace. Comparison sets us up for discontent. Because no matter how far we reach, there will always be someone else at a different place in life with a different set of experiences and goals. Instead of comparing, imagine if we focused on celebrating the successes of others, seeing them as inspiration rather than competition. Imagine if we allowed their journeys to remind us that life has a rhythm and timing unique to each of us. By turning our attention inward, by honoring our own steps, we reclaim the energy we once gave away to comparison and reinvest it into our own growth. In the end, the only meaningful comparison is with ourselves. Are we kinder, more resilient, and more compassionate today than we were yesterday? Have we learned, even if imperfectly, how to navigate life's twists and turns? When we stop the cycle of comparison, we free ourselves to live authentically, to savor our progress, and to experience a genuine, unshakable confidence that is rooted in self-respect, not in someone else's story. Fear of failure is perhaps one of the most powerful forces that holds us back. An invisible cage that keeps us from stepping beyond the bounds of what's comfortable, familiar, or safe. It's a natural feeling we want to succeed, to be liked, to prove our worth. But somewhere along the way, the idea of failing becomes a threat to our very sense of self. We begin to equate failing with inadequacy, as though one misstep defines us entirely, branding us with the notion that we're somehow less than if we don't achieve a desired outcome. This fear often stems from early experiences where failure was met with disappointment or criticism, embedding a deep-rooted belief that mistakes are dangerous, embarrassing, or shameful. As we grow older, this belief calcifies into a rigid mindset that makes us wary of taking risks. We find ourselves sidestepping opportunities, avoiding challenges, and settling for the known rather than risking the unknown. It's as if we'd rather stay safe in a small circle of comfort than risk venturing out into a larger world where uncertainty and the possibility of failure awaits. What we forget, however, is that failure isn't a reflection of our intrinsic worth. It's a part of the process, a teacher that refines us rather than diminishes us. If we look closely, every stumble and setback carries within it a lesson that can lead to greater strength, insight, and resilience. It's often through our failures that we develop the qualities that later become our greatest assets: adaptability, compassion, perseverance. We become more human, more relatable, and ironically more capable of real success because we've tasted what it means to fall and get back up. But fear of failure warps our perception, leading us to believe that any mistake or shortcoming will somehow expose our unworthiness. So we procrastinate, delay, or keep our dreams in the realm of maybe someday, because as long as we don't try, we don't risk failing. Yet what we're really doing is trading away our potential step by step, decision by decision, until the days blend into one another and our dreams become distant memories. Imagine if instead we saw failure as an essential ingredient of growth, as natural as breathing or learning to walk. Imagine if we approach life's challenges not with dread, but with curiosity, knowing that each attempt is a step forward, regardless of the outcome. When we do this, we free ourselves from the paralyzing grip of what if and begin to live fully, embracing the richness of experience that comes with trying, experimenting, and learning. The irony is that avoiding failure doesn't protect us, it limits us. We become smaller, boxed in by the very fears we hoped would keep us safe. Real confidence, real success comes when we're willing to embrace the risk of failure, to see each experience as a brushstroke in the grand canvas of our lives. By reframing failure as a valuable part of the journey, we shift from a fear-based mindset to one grounded in resilience and trust, knowing that come what may, we are capable of growing through it. To truly live means to lean into life with all its messiness, to accept that we'll fall as often as we rise. The fear of failure may not disappear, but when we accept it as part of the process, it loses its power to hold us back. We find the courage to step forward, not in spite of our fear, but with it, allowing it to be a reminder of our capacity to stretch, to learn, and ultimately to thrive. Negative self-talk is that subtle, persistent voice inside that critiques, doubts, and minimizes us. It's often disguised as caution or realism, whispering that we're not quite good enough, that we'll fail if we try, or that we don't really deserve success or happiness. This internal monologue, while seemingly harmless, can become a powerful barrier, undermining our confidence and limiting our potential from within. Over time, it shapes our self-image so that we no longer see our strengths or possibilities, we see only our perceived flaws and shortcomings. This voice can be relentless, surfacing in moments of uncertainty or vulnerability. We may find ourselves brushing off accomplishments, attributing them to luck or chance, while magnifying any small mistakes or setbacks. It's as though we are constantly diminishing ourselves, focusing on what we lack rather than acknowledging what we bring. And as these thoughts repeat, they become deeply ingrained beliefs, influencing how we perceive and engage with the world. Instead of seeing challenges as opportunities, we view them as threats. Each one another test we're sure will fail. Negative self-talk often stems from past experiences or messages we've internalized over time. Maybe we were once told we weren't enough in some way, and so we carried that evaluation forward, allowing it to cloud our sense of self. Or perhaps we learned to compare ourselves harshly to others, picking apart our own abilities and appearance because we feared judgment or rejection. But as adults, this narrative no longer serves us. It keeps us in a cycle of self-doubt, preventing us from fully engaging with life, from pursuing dreams, and from appreciating who we genuinely are. What makes this type of self-talk so insidious is its familiarity. We often don't even realize it's happening because it's woven into our daily thoughts, quietly influencing our actions and decisions. It holds us back, convincing us that we're safe for staying small or not taking risks. The irony, though, is that by allowing these thoughts to dictate our lives, we deny ourselves the chance to grow, to thrive, and to experience life's full potential. Reversing negative self-talk takes time, patience, and self-compassion. It begins by noticing those automatic, unkind thoughts and questioning their validity. Are they true, or are they just remnants of old stories? When we observe these thoughts without judgment, we create space to rewrite them, to replace harsh criticism with gentler, more constructive language. Instead of "I can't do this," we might say, "This is challenging, but I'll give it my best." Small shifts like these can lead to a profound transformation, helping us approach life with more openness, curiosity, and self-acceptance. Imagine for a moment if we spoke to ourselves as kindly as we would a dear friend, someone we deeply believed in, someone we wanted to see succeed and flourish. What if we encouraged ourselves, celebrated our efforts, and saw our imperfections as part of our unique story? When we replace negative self-talk with compassion and understanding, we reclaim our confidence, building a foundation of inner strength that no external circumstance can shake. Over time, as we shift our self-talk, we begin to see the world differently. Challenges become opportunities for growth, and setbacks are simply part of the journey. We're more willing to try new things, to reach for our dreams, because we're no longer hindered by self-imposed limitations. Our self-image transforms, and with it, our entire experience of life expands. Negative self-talk loses its grip, allowing us to approach each day with resilience, curiosity, and a deep belief in our own worth. Seeking validation from others is a habit many of us fall into without even realizing it. We look to friends, family, colleagues, and even strangers to affirm our worth and decisions. It's a natural human desire. We all want to be seen, valued, and acknowledged. But when our sense of self becomes overly reliant on the approval or opinions of others, we can lose touch with our true selves, allowing external validation to become the foundation of our confidence and happiness. Instead of standing firm in who we are, we become swayed by what others think we should be, do, or believe. This habit often begins innocently, rooted in a need for connection and belonging. As children, we sought approval to feel secure and accepted, learning quickly that certain behaviors earned praise while others brought disapproval. Over time, however, this conditioning can become a trap. As adults, we may find ourselves continually adjusting our actions, appearances, or beliefs to fit into someone else's idea of who we should be. We might hold back from sharing our real opinions, downplay our accomplishments, or even pursue careers or lifestyles that aren't aligned with our own values just to keep the approval flowing. In doing so, we deny ourselves the freedom to fully express our individuality. When we're driven by a need for validation, we hand over control of our happiness and self-worth to forces outside ourselves. This creates a fragile sense of self, one that's highly reactive to praise and criticism. A compliment can lift us up temporarily, while criticism can send us spiraling into doubt and insecurity. We become like ships tossed about by the opinions of others, never anchoring in our own understanding of who we are. And the more we rely on external validation, the more we inadvertently silence our inner voice, suppressing our natural intuition and unique insights. We lose sight of what truly matters to us because we're too focused on gaining the approval we've come to depend on. This reliance on others' validation also stifles growth. Real growth often involves taking risks, making mistakes, and following a path that may not always align with others' expectations. But when we're overly focused on pleasing others, we may hesitate to step out of our comfort zones or pursue our authentic interests. We limit ourselves, fearing that any move away from what's acceptable or normal will bring criticism or disapproval. Ironically, we may end up living lives that feel hollow, even if they look successful from the outside. In striving to make everyone else happy, we lose the very essence of our own fulfillment. Learning to release the need for external validation takes practice, but it's a deeply liberating process. It starts with the recognition that true worth isn't something that can be given or taken away by others. It's an intrinsic part of who we are. We begin to ask ourselves, what do I truly want? What values and goals resonate with me? Regardless of what others think, by tuning into these questions, we shift our focus from external approval to internal alignment, building a stronger, more resilient sense of self. Imagine a life where you feel at peace with who you are, where you make decisions not based on what others will think, but on what genuinely brings you joy and growth. It doesn't mean we no longer care about others or dismiss their perspectives, but rather that we prioritize our own sense of purpose and alignment. We learn to value constructive feedback without letting it define us. We enjoy compliments without needing them to feel complete. When we stop chasing validation, we reclaim our power. We build confidence that's rooted not in fleeting praise, but in an enduring trust in ourselves. Life becomes richer, fuller, and more meaningful because we're finally living from a place of authenticity. We embrace our imperfections and uniqueness, understanding that our true value lies not in others' opinions, but in our own ability to live with purpose, clarity, and self-compassion. In freeing ourselves from the need for validation, we discover the profound strength of simply being true to who we are. Overthinking is a mental maze that traps us in loops of worry, doubt, and endless analysis. It often begins with a simple thought, a decision we need to make, a conversation we had, or an upcoming event. But instead of reaching a conclusion, we find ourselves spinning, re-examining every angle, potential outcome, and hypothetical scenario. This cycle can be exhausting as our minds attempt to predict the future, prevent mistakes, or control every detail. In the process, we become tangled in our own thoughts, losing perspective, and often creating problems that weren't even there to begin with. At its core, overthinking is driven by a need for certainty. We want to make the right choice, say the perfect thing, or foresee every possible risk. In a world full of unknowns, this desire for control can feel reassuring, as though we're arming ourselves with enough information to avoid discomfort or disappointment. But the irony is that overthinking rarely provides clarity. Instead, it clouds our minds and paralyzes us. Decisions that could be made quickly become monumental tasks. A single moment of doubt spirals into a cascade of what-ifs, each question pulling us further from the simplicity and spontaneity of life. The more we overthink, the more we disconnect from the present moment. Rather than experiencing life as it unfolds, we're stuck in a mental realm of hypothetical scenarios. We replay past conversations, wondering if we said the wrong thing. We anticipate future events, imagining every possible way things could go wrong. In this way, overthinking creates a kind of distance, where instead of engaging with what's in front of us, we're trapped in the mental echo chamber of our own thoughts. This disconnection not only fuels anxiety, but also limits our ability to experience joy, spontaneity, and genuine connection with others. Overthinking is also fueled by a fear of failure or rejection. We believe that if we just think hard enough, we can avoid mistakes and shield ourselves from judgment or regret. But life by its nature is unpredictable, and no amount of analysis can account for every variable. By trying to think our way to perfection, we rob ourselves of the freedom to learn, adapt, and grow from real experiences. Overthinking often leads to procrastination as we put off making decisions or taking action, hoping that with enough thought we'll find the perfect answer. In reality, this search for certainty only keeps us stuck as we wait for a moment that may never arrive. Breaking free from overthinking involves learning to trust ourselves and the natural flow of life. This means acknowledging that while thinking is a valuable tool, it is not the only way to navigate our experiences. Sometimes clarity comes not from more thought, but from stepping back, letting go, and simply allowing ourselves to act. By practicing mindfulness and grounding ourselves in the present, we can quiet the incessant chatter of our minds, giving ourselves space to breathe, reflect, and respond intuitively. Imagine if instead of analyzing every decision, we approach life with a spirit of openness and curiosity, embracing the unknown rather than fearing it. What if we allowed ourselves to make mistakes, knowing that each one is a step on the path to growth and self-discovery? Overthinking loses its grip when we realize that there is no single right path and that we can adapt to whatever comes our way. Each moment of decision becomes less about finding a perfect answer and more about taking a step forward, trusting that we have the resilience to handle whatever unfolds. Ultimately, overcoming overthinking requires patience and self-compassion. It's a journey of learning to trust ourselves, to accept uncertainty, and to value action over endless deliberation. When we break free from the chains of overthinking, we open ourselves to a life that is richer, more present, and deeply fulfilling. Instead of being consumed by our thoughts, we find a renewed freedom to engage fully with the world around us, savoring each experience without the burden of mental overanalysis. We realize that true clarity and confidence are not products of endless thinking, but of living fully, one moment at a time. Dwelling on past mistakes is a form of mental captivity where we repeatedly revisit moments that didn't go as planned, reliving them over and over and over in our minds. We replay conversations, actions, and choices, analyzing what we could have done differently, imagining a version of ourselves that didn't make those errors. This fixation on the past can be overwhelming, filling us with regret, guilt, or shame, as though we are somehow still paying for decisions that are long gone. And while reflection has its place, dwelling on mistakes binds us to what cannot be changed, preventing us from moving forward and embracing the present. This habit often arises from a belief that by rethinking our past, we can avoid similar mistakes in the future. We think that if we scrutinize every detail, we'll somehow learn our lesson or make it right. But the truth is, continuous rumination rarely brings clarity or growth. It only deepens our attachment to negative feelings. Dwelling doesn't actually lead to solutions. It keeps us anchored in regret, reinforcing the feeling that we're stuck, defined by our past rather than free to redefine ourselves. What makes this pattern so insidious is that it often distorts our self-image. When we constantly focus on mistakes, we begin to see ourselves through a lens of imperfection and failure. We identify more with the moments we feel we messed up than with our strengths, successes, and the many times we acted with grace and integrity. This imbalance can chip away at our confidence, creating a self-concept that is narrow and incomplete. Instead of recognizing our ability to learn, adapt, and grow, we begin to define ourselves by a single chapter in our story, forgetting that we're capable of turning the page. Dwelling on mistakes also disconnects us from the present. While our bodies are in the here and now, our minds remain stuck in a moment that's long gone. We miss out on new experiences, insights, and joys because we're mentally tethered to an experience that no longer exists except in memory. The energy we spend on these past mistakes could be used to nurture the present, to focus on the actions, choices, and connections that are available to us right now. Instead, we often feel drained, weighed down by a sense of unfinished business with a past that cannot be rewritten. The path to breaking free from this cycle starts with self-compassion and acceptance. Mistakes are part of being human. They are our teachers, guiding us toward growth and understanding. When we learn to look at our past errors with kindness, acknowledging that we did the best we could with what we knew then, we begin to release the grip of regret. We come to see that mistakes are not roadblocks but stepping stones, each one contributing to the unique journey of who we're becoming. Imagine if instead of dwelling, we could look back, take the lessons we need, and then let go, trusting that we are always capable of growth and change. What if we allowed our past to inform us without controlling us, acknowledging its role in shaping us, but refusing to let it limit who we can become? Each time we resist the urge to dwell, we reclaim a piece of our energy and sense of self. We shift our focus from what's already happened to what we can create, experience, and accomplish now. Learning to move beyond past mistakes doesn't mean ignoring them or denying their impact. Rather, it's about integrating them into the fabric of our lives in a balanced way. It's understanding that our worth is not diminished by our mistakes and that we have the power to choose how much influence they have over our present and future. By embracing a compassionate perspective, we free ourselves from the shackles of regret, allowing the past to inform us without consuming us. In this way, we find a deeper sense of peace and resilience. We can look back on our past with understanding, see the growth we've achieved, and walk forward with the confidence that we are not bound by who we were, but free to become who we choose to be. And in this freedom, we discover the profound strength of living fully in the present, unburdened by the weight of yesterday's mistakes. Setting unrealistic expectations is a common trap, often fueled by ambition, idealism, or a desire to push ourselves toward greatness. We create visions of how our lives, relationships, or careers should unfold, imagining ourselves achieving lofty goals without setbacks or effortlessly navigating challenges. While there's a beauty in dreaming big, when our expectations become too rigid or high, they can create a sense of perpetual dissatisfaction, as reality inevitably falls short of the perfection we envision. We find ourselves constantly striving but never fully arriving, always feeling that what we have or who we are isn't quite enough. These unrealistic expectations often come from comparing ourselves to idealized versions of success that we see around us. We see people who seem to have it all or achieve remarkable things effortlessly, and we start to believe that we should be able to do the same. Social media, for example, shows us curated highlights of people's lives, creating the illusion that happiness, success, and fulfillment are straightforward and attainable without compromise or sacrifice. This distorted view sets us up for disappointment as we attempt to match our messy, nuanced lives to polished images that only tell part of the story. Unrealistic expectations also stem from the standards we set for ourselves. Often, these standards are rooted in a belief that we must be perfect, that any shortfall reflects inadequacy or failure. We tell ourselves that we should always be productive, constantly improving, or endlessly achieving, creating a cycle where we feel pressured to measure up to ideals that may not even align with our true needs or values. This self-imposed pressure can lead to stress, burnout, and a constant feeling of falling short, as though we're perpetually trying to reach a destination that moves further away the closer we get. When we set our sights too high, we lose sight of progress, focusing instead on the gap between where we are and where we think we should be. Instead of celebrating small wins, growth, or moments of joy along the way, we dismiss them as insignificant, believing that only the final achievement matters. This fixation on a distant, idealized outcome robs us of the ability to experience fulfillment in the present, leading us to feel unaccomplished or unworthy no matter how much we actually achieve or improve. Unrealistic expectations can also strain our relationships. When we hold others to high, rigid standards, expecting them to meet our every need or never disappoint us, we set ourselves up for frustration and resentment. People are human, full of their own imperfections, growth, and individuality, and they will inevitably fall short of our ideals. By expecting perfection in relationships, we miss out on the richness of authentic connection, where acceptance, understanding, and growth take precedence over impossible standards. Letting go of unrealistic expectations begins with self-awareness and compassion. It's recognizing that the journey is just as valuable as the destination, and that imperfection is a natural, essential part of life. When we soften our expectations, we give ourselves permission to embrace the learning process, to make mistakes, and to grow at a pace that feels right for us. We become more flexible, open to adjusting our goals as our needs and circumstances evolve. Rather than clinging to an ideal, we focus on aligning our efforts with our true values, building a life that feels meaningful, fulfilling, and authentic. Imagine a life where we set goals that inspire us without chaining us to a rigid standard. What if we approached our dreams with curiosity and openness, willing to adapt, adjust, and celebrate each step along the way? By replacing unrealistic expectations with realistic, flexible aspirations, we create space for joy, growth, and self-acceptance. We learn to value progress over perfection and to see each experience, whether it matches our ideal or not, as part of the journey. In our relationships, we find greater compassion and patience, allowing ourselves and others to show up as we are without the pressure to be anything else. By lowering unrealistic expectations, we nurture a foundation of mutual respect and appreciation, where connection thrives, unburdened by unattainable ideals. Ultimately, letting go of unrealistic expectations is an act of self-love. It's an invitation to be kinder to ourselves, to recognize that our worth isn't measured by perfection, but by our ability to engage fully with life, to learn, grow, and adapt. In releasing the grip of rigid expectations, we find a deeper sense of peace, freedom, and genuine fulfillment, allowing us to live with a sense of ease and confidence, knowing that who we are and what we bring to the world is already enough. Ignoring personal achievements is a silent but significant way in which we undermine our own worth. Many of us achieve things daily, big and small, that reflect our efforts, skills, and resilience. Yet, rather than celebrating or acknowledging these moments, we often brush them off, seeing them as no big deal or thinking that others have achieved more or done better. This habit of downplaying our successes creates a pattern where we continually overlook our own progress, depriving ourselves of the confidence and satisfaction that come from recognizing our growth. One of the main reasons we ignore our achievements is a belief that celebrating them might come across as arrogance or self-importance. We've been taught that humility is a virtue, and while humility is valuable, it can also lead us to dismiss our successes entirely, assuming they don't really count or matter. Instead of seeing our accomplishments as proof of our efforts and capabilities, we focus on what we haven't yet done, reinforcing a sense of inadequacy and fueling a drive to do more without appreciating what we've already achieved. Ignoring achievements is also tied to perfectionism and high standards. When we set the bar impossibly high, only monumental achievements seem worthy of acknowledgement, leaving day-to-day progress or small wins unnoticed. We tell ourselves that we're only worthy of celebration once we've reached a certain level, reached a specific milestone, or met an ideal. This approach prevents us from experiencing a sense of satisfaction and self-worth, as we're constantly chasing the next big thing without pausing to appreciate where we are now. This lack of recognition can lead to burnout as we keep pushing ourselves forward without refueling. Just as athletes need rest days to recover, our minds and spirits need moments of reflection and appreciation to stay motivated and energized. When we ignore our achievements, we deny ourselves the rest stops along the journey, leaving us feeling exhausted and wondering if our efforts even matter. This constant drive without reflection can erode our confidence as we become convinced that we're not really accomplishing much, even though in reality we're making significant strides. Ignoring personal achievements also shapes our self-perception. If we only focus on what we lack or haven't done, we reinforce a narrative of inadequacy. Over time, we come to see ourselves as not good enough, internalizing a story that we are somehow falling short. This mindset can lead to a negative self-image, where even when we do achieve something substantial, we downplay it or attribute it to luck rather than skill, reinforcing a cycle of self-doubt and insecurity. Learning to recognize and celebrate our achievements is essential for building confidence and resilience. It doesn't mean we're boasting or resting on our laurels. Rather, it's about creating a balanced perspective that values growth alongside ambition. By acknowledging our efforts and successes, we build a foundation of self-respect and self-trust, reminding ourselves that we are capable and worthy. Celebrating achievements, no matter how small, helps us stay motivated, recognize our strengths, and approach future challenges with a greater sense of possibility. Imagine if instead of brushing off our successes, we took a moment to appreciate each one. What if, at the end of each day, we acknowledge the small wins, the acts of courage, or the skills we use to overcome challenges? By making this a regular practice, we begin to shift our self-image, building confidence that is grounded not in perfection, but in genuine self-appreciation. This practice also opens up space for gratitude and joy. We see that we are making progress, that our efforts are worthwhile, and that each achievement is a step on the path of growth. In recognizing our own progress, we cultivate a more compassionate relationship with ourselves, one that honors the journey just as much as the destination. Ultimately, celebrating our achievements is a way of nurturing our own well-being. It's about saying, I see you, I value your efforts, you're doing well. By honoring our progress, we build a sense of inner fulfillment and resilience, allowing us to move through life with confidence, clarity, and a deep respect for our own unique path. In conclusion, the journey of self-discovery and personal growth is often obstructed by the insidious habits that chip away at our confidence. Whether it's the illusion of perfection, the constant comparison to others, the fear of failure, negative self-talk, seeking validation from external sources, overthinking, dwelling on past mistakes, setting unrealistic expectations, or ignoring our achievements. Each of these patterns can lead us to feel less than we truly are. Yet within each of us lies the potential to break free from these constraints. By cultivating self-awareness, embracing imperfection, and practicing self-compassion, we can reshape our relationship with ourselves. We learn to celebrate our achievements no matter how small, and to recognize that every misstep is merely a stepping stone toward growth. As we let go of the unrealistic standards imposed by ourselves and society, we open ourselves to a more authentic existence, one where we can thrive without the weight of comparison or self-doubt. The path to building true confidence lies not in perfection or the absence of failure, but in the courageous act of showing up for ourselves, embracing our unique journeys, and understanding that we are enough just as we are. So let us move forward with grace and humility, ready to celebrate our individuality, trust our instincts, and honor our achievements. In doing so, we can foster a confidence that is resilient, authentic, and deeply rooted in the understanding that our worth is inherent and unshakable. Let us step into our lives with the courage to be ourselves, unburdened by the limitations of self-doubt, ready to embrace the beautiful, messy journey that is uniquely ours. Thanks for watching.